Here is an EO Alive LeGrand story.
Hey, Eastern Oregon Alive, I'm Brent, and I'm here today with Mark Stokes, who is from Idaho Power, and he is the project lead for the B2H power line that is proposed to run from Boardman to Hemingway, Idaho. And he's here to talk to us and kind of give us the Idaho Power perspective and kind of answer some of our questions and some of the questions I've heard people ask. And so, Mark, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this interview. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah. So tell me how long you've been with Idaho Power, and I don't know, give me a little brief story about yourself, if you wouldn't mind for a second.
Oh, I've been with Idaho Power a little over 27 years now. Most of my career I spent on the power supply side of the company. In what I'm doing now, as far as working on the B2H project, I'm on the transmission side of the company, which is the wires side that deals more with transporting the energy than generating.
Okay. So the obvious question is why? What's the benefit of this, and why this is an enormous project? So there's got to be some huge motivation to do this. Kind of help me.
Yeah. Okay.
Help me understand the why. Why are you guys doing this?
Yeah, and we've actually, we've been working on the B2H project for a lot of years. In fact, I think we're in our 12th year now trying to permit the project. To fully answer your question, I've got to go back into the history of it. Back in 2006, excuse me, was when the project was first identified. And the way that was identified, for a lot of years, Idaho Power has conducted what's called an integrated resource planning process, or IRP. And that's a requirement that we do that. Both the Idaho and Oregon Public Utility Commissions require us to do that process. And what it involves is every 2 years we go out and we look at things like our load forecast going forward, and all the things that it's going to take to be able to serve customers in our service territory going forward. And we are actually obligated to provide electrical service to our customers. So that planning process, the kind of the highest level goal of it is to identify what types and sizes of resources are going to be necessary to meet customer demand in the future, and to do that with the least cost and lowest risk to our customers, because ultimately it is our customers that pay the bill for projects that we build and what the cost is for us to deliver electricity to them. So if you go back to 2006, like I said, in our 2006 IRP was when the B2H project was first identified. At that time, it was called Boise to McNary. So the same two general endpoints. And that's, taken a little bit different shape over time as we've gone through all the permitting. Now, as I mentioned, every 2 years when we update our IRP, in every one of those IRPs that we have done since that 2006 IRP, the Boardman Hemingway project has proven to be the lowest cost, least risk way to meet our customers' needs in the future. And so that's the real background on why we've been pursuing the B2H project.
So and here's a question that I've heard. So if we have electrical devices that are becoming more efficient, energy efficient all the time, how does that fit into the future needs of more power? Are we saving enough energy? I mean, I don't speak to that, because clearly, even though devices are using less energy, you guys still feel like there's a need. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, for quite a few years now, we've actually seen the trend in our customer statistics that you're talking about, that the use per customer is actually going down because of energy efficiency measures and those types of things. But the other piece of that is you've got to realize how much growth we're actually seeing in southern Idaho.
Right.
It's been phenomenal, especially here the last couple of years. And so when you look at the big picture, the overall growth in our load is still growing faster than the smaller incremental decreases that each customer is using based on, energy efficiency upgrades and new technologies that have been developed.
Okay. So what goes in, tell me how a company like yours or a project like this, how do you guys decide the route that a power line goes? Because, clearly a lot of whatever controversy there is centers around those choices. How do you guys determine which way to go? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, going back pretty early on in the life of the project, we did a lot of work with folks in Eastern Oregon, talking about potential routes, identifying issues related to the route of the project. And then ultimately we ended up, we had to take all that information and propose a route in our application to the Bureau of Land Management, which is the federal agency that has overseen the NEPA process for the B2H line. So in our application to them, we had a proposed route, and then they worked through all of the issues related to the route and the project in general. And as you work through that process, they make changes to the route. And that's based on things like trying to avoid sage grouse habitat, elk and deer winter range is another issue that we try to avoid, or BLM wants to avoid. All those types of things play into it. So ultimately, when BLM finishes their process, they issue what's called a record of decision, or a ROD for short. And that ROD basically has an agency preferred route. And so if you go back and look at what we initially proposed and what BLM came out with as their final agency preferred route, there's some substantial differences. They've moved it a lot of places, again, to avoid things like the sage grouse and other issues. So that's kind of how we arrive at that. And then ultimately, BLM ends up issuing us a right-of-way grant for the line that they have basically approved in their process.
So how much of that process, and this might be speaking for BLM, but how much of that process involves public land and avoiding private land and all of that business?
Well, they certainly they look at land ownership as a part of it, but I don't know that it factors into the actual route that much. If you look at the 300 miles that the B2H line is planned for right now, roughly 70% of it is on private property, and about 30% is on primarily federal ground. There's a little bit of state ground, but not much. But it's mostly BLM land and a little bit of Forest Service that the current route crosses.
So then do those decisions of avoiding elk habitat and those land, does that affect, or has that affected, the route that it is coming through our valley here?
Oh, I was not associated with the project back when that level of detail on the routing was being looked at, but I'm certain that all those factors did come into play. Other things that I haven't mentioned, there's things like cultural resources that are out there that BLM tries to avoid. And all, they get input from a lot of different agencies and the public as they put together the route that they ultimately propose back to us.
Okay. So in our area, I mean, so there are two proposed areas. Probably the biggest hubbub that's going on is, that it's the power line, at least from the way I understand it, the last proposal that you guys submitted, that it will take the Mill Creek route, which is, I think that's what they call it, which essentially will be very visible from LeGrand. So it'll be within our view shed. I think that's the route that at this point is planned, with the optional route is going through the Morgan Lake area. So why, I guess, I don't know, speak to that. Tell me why, why are those the options? Why are those the only two options at this point?
Yeah. Okay, to give you, again, a little bit of history with that. When BLM came out with their record of decision, their agency preferred route through that area was called the Glass Hill route. At that time, that was a route that we had never even proposed. And so a lot of the environmental and cultural and other types of study work that were required to be done had not been done on that route. They had been done on the Mill Creek route and the Morgan Lake route. And so, on top of the whole federal BLM NEPA process, we've got the Oregon State process now, the FSEC process as well, that we're dealing with. So when we had to submit our application to the state of Oregon, the Oregon Department of Energy, in our application, the only two routes through that LeGrand area that we had in our application were the Mill Creek route and the Morgan Lake route that you're talking about. So those are the two that are on the table right now that the ODO and FSEC are looking at to determine whether either one of or both of those routes meets all of the state standards.
So the reason that the Glass Hill route was never fully considered was because it wasn't fully vetted, essentially. Is that right? The study work had not been done to be able to put that route into our application at the state level. Okay. And who would have done that work? I mean, how would that work would have been accomplished? And is it too late to consider that? I mean, ultimately, that's the big topic that's on the table for folks here.
Yeah, it's, to go back and study that now at this point would be a substantial delay in the project. We'd have to go out and hire consultants to go out and do that work. And then we'd have to amend our application. And I'm guessing, but I wouldn't be surprised if it would be a couple of years delay to try to go back and do that at this point.
Just for, I don't know how long that route is, but I mean, just for like a 2-mile span, that would take that much effort to do that?
Yeah, and I have not looked exactly at the areas that would have to be studied, and you bring up a good point there, Brent. The Morgan Lake route isn't all that much different than the Glass Hill route. There's a lot of common areas there between those two routes.
Well, and I guess that's been, and when I met with your guys, a couple of months ago, that was kind of my question, is how come there's not a third option, whatever it might be, because, and I guess the question that kind of follows up here is, how much of this is determined about making landowners mad up there? How do you guys balance between pissing off a whole town versus pissing off a few landowners? How do you guys wade through that process?
Well, we've expended a lot of effort trying to work with people to resolve issues where we can. Mm-hmm. A lot of landowners, private landowners primarily, that know that a particular route is crossing their property, we'll go meet with them. We'll look at issues they have and any ways we could move structure locations that would alleviate some of their concerns. We call that micrositing. So we've done a lot of that work with various landowners. We've met with folks there at the city of LeGrand and Union County, talking about the differences between the routes. The big issue for us, up to this point is that we have not been able to take either one of those routes off the table in the event that ODO and FSEC were to find either one of them not suitable based on what the state standards require.
Okay.
So until we get that feedback from FSEC, we're not going to be able to start looking at actually making a decision whether we would go with Mill Creek or Morgan Lake.
And is any of the state standards involve viewshed? Does any of the state standards involve literally the impact that it makes on the view of whatever it might be? I mean, is that part of the considerations?
Well, certainly, the impact to people's view sheds is probably one of the biggest issues that we tend to hear about.
Sure, yeah,
I think
right.
That's really although a lot of people won't say it, I think that's really the primary reason they're against the line. Again, and we do recognize that, and we do try to work with landowners. In fact, the Morgan Lake route was developed as an alternative to Mill Creek just for that reason.
Right.
Because the Mill Creek route is so much more visible from the LeGrand area. Putting it up through the Morgan Lake area resolves that issue, I think, for a lot of people in the city.
Right, but when it comes back to the state approval of this and meeting the state standard, does any of their standard, I mean, I realize that you guys are dealing with this thing of it going through people's view shed, but is any part of the state standard that it picks the least possible impact on somebody's view shed?
I don't believe it's specifically addressed that way. I think, I think everybody recognizes that whatever route you pick, somebody is
right. Yeah, somebody's going to be right. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way we end up addressing that is that in certain places where it's identified that there's maybe more impact than others, that we would end up doing some kind of mitigation to offset what that impact is.
Okay. And the mitigation that I understand that you guys can do is you can pick a lower profile tower. Is that kind of the opportunity? I mean, or is there something, I don't know, talk about that a little bit. What is even on the table?
Yeah, that when you talk about a lower profile tower, you're talking about what we call an H-frame.
Okay.
It is not quite as tall as the lattice towers. So that helps a little bit. In discussions that we've had with the city of LeGrand, ODO in their draft proposed order, they have asked us to put in these H-frames up by the Morgan Lake area, just to reduce the impact up in that area. The discussions we've had with the city and what we proposed back to them was to, rather than spend the additional money on those towers, we would rather take that money and put it into improvements at the park itself that people would, we think, get a lot more benefit out of. And as far as upgrades to the park, things like new restroom facilities, some work on the parking lot facilities. I don't know what all they could do there at the park, but I think the value of doing those kinds of upgrades at the park would provide a lot more benefit to the people than just changing a tower type.
So to restate that, just make sure I understand. So then what you guys are proposing is that if the Morgan Lake route was the route that it went through, then the state organization is requesting that you do the lower profile towers. But if the towers are going to go through there anyhow, they're going to have some kind of an impact, a visual impact, regardless of whether it's a low or a tall tower, and that maybe you're proposing that you put the higher tower through and then take the savings from the cost and invest that in the Morgan Lake Park. Is that?
Yes, in essence, yeah. That
okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. And I follow all that. So let's pull back just a little bit and kind of tell me, are there any other, I mean, part of the questions is, hey, this is about money at the end of the day, and there's a lot that people don't know, because power lines go two different ways, and so this is clearly, I mean, there's an opportunity when you guys have access power. I don't know how it all works. The inside of that more than I, but I guess the bottom line is, do you guys expect to see a profit from this, or is the motivation sincerely just for providing for the future needs of your customers? Yeah.
To answer that, Brent, I've got to go back again to our IRP process. The fact that the B2H line has been selected as the lowest cost, least risk way to meet our customers' needs. Mm-hmm. If we weren't going to build this line, we'd have to come up with some other type of a generation resource to be able to still meet that need. So, and all of the other things we've looked at are more expensive to do.
Okay.
And so when you talk about doing it for the money, if we weren't, proposing and planning on building B2H, we'd have to be spending basically our customers' money doing something different.
Okay.
So it's, we're in a lot of ways kind of agnostic to, how that money gets spent, other than we're trying to make prudent decisions, through our planning process. So, and if, the whole regulated utility model is based on the utility being required to serve customers, and then the customers basically reimburse the utility for the cost of supplying that electricity. And there is a rate of return that's factored into that, and that's where Idaho Power makes its money. So it really, like I'm saying, it wouldn't matter whether we were doing B2H or it was another generation resource. It's going to take something to be able to meet that future need of customers.
Okay. So a lot of people say, well, why don't they just put up a big solar panel thing? Can't they do their supply? Can't they meet their needs that way? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, solar is another particular type of resource that gets analyzed in our IRP process. Solar and wind in particular, have a lot of those resources have been built in the Pacific Northwest over the last 10 years. And that in itself is another reason for B2H, because those resources are what we call non-dispatchable, because you cannot control when the wind blows, and the sun is a little more predictable, but you never know when clouds are going to come in. So you don't have control over the output of those resources. And so how the transmission helps you out there, if you take the region as a whole, there's going to be places where you're getting more output from those non-dispatchable resources, and there'll be other areas where there's little to no output. So to make that all work and keep everything balanced, you've got to have the wires to move the electricity to where it's needed.
So, and give me an idea of how much solar, this might be an outrageous question, how much solar would it take to supply what it is that you hope to get through the B2H lines? I mean, taking out the the variability of the sun and all that. I mean, can you help people understand?
Oh, I don't have a specific number, Brent, and I'd have to go to our planning folks to have them look at that. Solar, for Idaho Power, for a lot of years, our growth needs have been related to hot summer days, because our highest loads come when we get a combination of customers' air conditioners running in the summertime and agricultural farmers out there with big irrigation pumps.
Okay.
And so we see our biggest load typically will hit each year anywhere from June 1 till about July 15th is when we will see our peak load each year. And so that being able to meet that peak load is what we plan to. And when you're talking a solar resource specifically, again, because of the uncertainty on the output you'll get, when you, I guess, look at the numbers related to solar resources, you have to derate that peak output to account for that variability. So you have to take a fairly conservative look at it to still be confident that you're going to get the amount of power out of it when you need it.
Okay. So we're a part of OTEC here in this area. And, OTEC has the advantage of saying that almost 95% of their energy is renewable. It's green. Part of it is because they get a huge amount of that from the Bonneville system. So how much of that, that you guys don't have that same luxury. So tell me is part of this effort, is part of what you're trying to do is to become more green? I mean, talk a little bit about that. Your dependency on stuff that's on coal-related type stuff.
Yes, certainly. In the last several years, we've seen an increased interest from our customers in getting renewable energy. In fact, Idaho Power has recently proposed to be 100% renewable by 2045. And that means totally getting out of the 3 coal plants that we are partners in with other utilities. So that is a piece of it. You mentioned Bonneville Power Administration. They're actually a partner in the B2H project with us because they have customers in southeastern Idaho that they need to be able to serve future load growth as well. And then our third party in the project with us is Pacific Corp. And Pacific Corp has got customers both on the eastern side of Idaho Power and over in Oregon and Washington, Northern California. So all 3 utilities have a need to move power kind of throughout the region.
So with partners, do you guys just divide the cost? I mean, what are the percentages and how does that work with those partners? Well,
through all the permitting that we've done, Idaho Power's been in the lead role through permitting. We are a 21% partner as far as permitting goes right now. Pacific Corp is 55% and Bonneville is 24%.
Okay.
Now those numbers could change by the time we get to construction. We don't know that yet because we don't have a construction agreement in place with the partners yet.
Okay. So, of the complaints and things that you guys have heard, are there any misconceptions that people totally get wrong? So anything that you want to specifically address?
Well, I guess one thing I hear a lot from the folks in Eastern Oregon is that there's no benefit to them of this line running through Oregon. So we try to talk about what some of those benefits are any chance we get. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Strictly looking at Union County, Our tax department has estimated that on an annual basis, we will end up spending about $675,000 a year in taxes that would go directly to Union County. So, that's a pretty substantial amount. Obviously, during construction, there'll be a lot of jobs that come to the area during construction. Granted, that'll be a short-lived benefit, but it's still a benefit nonetheless. Another one of the big benefits, even though there's not going to be a substation or a dropping off point in Union County anywhere, what will benefit the county is the fact that the existing 230 kV line that we have is pretty much has been maxed out. So with the new B2H line, a lot of the energy that has traveled on that 230 line will get moved on to the 500 kV B2H line. And that'll free up capacity for local businesses and other new companies that want to move into the area. They'll be able to tap into that. In fact, we've got a substation right there in La Grande, and it's actually right adjacent to a BPA substation.
Okay.
So it will free up capacity on that existing system, which, like I said, will ultimately allow new load growth for OTEC in that area to be able to serve new customers.
Okay. So would you say that like OTEC is limited right now in what it is? If a big corporation wanted to come in and they had a big demand, then they would be limited in their ability to build here because of that the current line is full. Is that your assessment?
The current line I'm talking about is an Idaho Power owned line.
Right.
I'm not sure what other paths OTEC has to bring electricity into the valley there.
Okay.
And as far as the constraints that OTEC has right now, I'm just not that familiar with their planning process. I mean, certainly there would be some new growth they could take on, but how much? It would just depend on the size and the load of a new company, and how big it was.
Okay.
Whether they could serve it or not.
Okay. Well, and I think that, when people say, I don't think that people disregard the potential financial tax benefits that might be coming through. I think it's just easy for them to disregard those because it's not worth it to them. I mean, they value so much their view shed and the pristineness of what it is that they, I think I don't think it's that they don't recognize it. It's just that it's not enough for them. That's, I guess I could understand that. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't want it through my backyard. I mean, and everybody faces that in one way or another, and I'm sure you get that too. We have a bike path between La Grande and Island City, and it's a cool thing for the community, but the reality is that literally it goes through some backyards and people are not happy about it, and this is similar, only on a much larger scale. Well, I'm trying to think, is there anything else that you can think of that we haven't really talked about, or any other complaints or misconceptions, or when people question the motives of it, you go like, oh, that's not it at all. I don't,
Yeah, well, and like I talked through with you, the big thing is if we weren't doing B2H, we'd have to be doing something else.
And that's a good question. What are the other options for Idaho if you don't do B2H?
Well, in our planning process, we look at all of the other types of resources out there that are feasible at this point. That would be everything from various types of natural gas plants, solar, wind. In fact, in our latest IRP that's coming out here, actually at the end of this month, it should be finished. On top of B2H, we're proposing, I believe it's 200 megawatts of solar in southern Idaho as a part of our plan over the next 20 years. We look at all those types of resources and including battery storage. There's been a lot of work done on storage technologies in the last 10, 15 years, and the technology is getting a lot better and the costs are coming down somewhat, but it's still prohibitive when you compare it against other alternatives right now.
So to kind of sum it up, what I hear you saying several different ways is that at the end of the day, you're trying to serve the needs of your Idaho customers. And through these studies, you guys have considered a number of different things, and the B2H is the least expensive. It's the best bang for the buck for your customers. And that there are other options, but they're more expensive.
That's true. One piece I would add to what you just said, Brent, is that we actually do have a fair number of Eastern Oregon customers as well.
Okay.
In fact, about 15% of our total load is Oregon customers.
Okay.
And our service territory in Oregon goes up to, I think, almost the Baker area.
Okay. Good. That's interesting. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time. Okay. So one last question. So if somebody, I mean, it's very common for people to say, hey, there's no point to this. They're going to do what they want to do anyhow. Why do I even need to put my voice into this? Tell me why that's not true, or tell me what they can do.
Well, where we're at in the FSEC process right now. There's a series of public hearings coming up. In fact, they start next week in Ontario on Tuesday night. The one in LeGrand will be on Thursday night of next week. Starts at 4:30 and goes until 8 o'clock. It's at I believe it's the Blue Mountain Convention Center.
Mm-hmm.
I will be there myself and several other Idaho Power people. We'll be there to answer questions. If people would like to talk to us and get some more details, we'd be glad to talk to them at that point.
Yeah. And they can show up, but does it make a difference? Will it make a difference?
This is the first time I've been through the Oregon State permitting process. So I don't know that I can answer that. I know the whole intent of the public hearings are to give members of the public an opportunity to get their voice on the record. Okay. And the FSEC council members will be there and they'll hear what they have to say. Now, what they do with it, I really don't know at this point. So, and the FSEC council members are the ones that are ultimately approving or disapproving, right? Is that correct? Yes. Yeah. They will be the ones that determine if we ultimately get a site certificate. Okay. When the process ends. All righty. Well, and we're intending on streaming that live on Eastern Oregon Alive, that hearing. So, yeah. Okay. All righty. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And we've been trying to get this set up for a while, and it's nice to meet you, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure I will see you next Thursday night. Yeah, sounds good, Brent. Thank you also. Yeah. Thanks, Eastern Oregon Alive, and we'll catch you next time.